Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be getting the show underway in just a moment. Just a quick compulsory plug for Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 21 by Rosa Corey. You can get that on Amazon. Now, this is a listener-supported broadcast, so please, if you do support the show, give us a donation, like the video, subscribe to the channel, or share that link around, ladies and gentlemen. Today's episode is sponsored by the NZPP, and we'll be getting underway just as soon as the backup channel starts up. So just give us one moment, and here we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state is Vinny's jokes. And my very special guest joining us today is the only Mark Passio, who's so accurate you could set a Casio G-Shock by his words. Now, thank you very much for joining us at such short notice as well, Mark. I only just called you into your show several hours ago. Now, we'll get into the interview in just a moment, but before we do, just a quick plug, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are unaware, we have over here Checkpoint Soldiers door-to-door testing, New Zealand's new COVID outbreak plan. So just to translate that into English, the military is now going to come into your home. All right, and they're going to be backing a bunch of unqualified people who are going to shove something right up your nose that can test positive for COVID, even if it ain't being used. And then, if you test positive for COVID, they might kidnap you and take you to a holding facility. That's the upshot, ladies and gentlemen. So these are troubled times. And the show today is sponsored by the NZPP, Reclaiming New Zealand for All the People. And we've just heard information today that, yes, they have signed the deals with another political party. So yes, they are going to be contesting the 2020 election. And according to online polling, we're polling around about the 30% mark on some metrics. So hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, we can get that up to 51% because, as Mark Passio has informed me, that's why Area 51 is called Area 51, because once 51% are on board, that's all that matters. So, Mark, today I'd like your a few pieces of advice for you. Now, first of all, have you heard of Billy TK or the NZPP yet?
I have not. Only from the links that you have sent me have I checked it out a little bit, but I don't know too much about it.
What do you know so far from what you've seen?
Well, I know that some draconian measures are attempted to be passed in New Zealand, and it completely is a violation of human rights. It is a huge presumption on the part of government and any particular party there that they have such rights delegated to them that they may do these types of forced screenings, because it is ultimately a claim on the human body that no one may refuse, according to them, that they will put them under duress or threat of imprisonment should they decide to not participate. That is coercion, that is duress, that is the threat of violence, and ultimately that is a claim on the ownership of the body of another. And there's a definition. You know, we have definitions of words for a reason in the English language and in languages in general, Vinny. You know, there's a reason we define words, because they mean something. The claim of ownership on the body of another, that is the definition of a particular English word, and that word is slavery. That's what we're talking about. And this is the problem, is that the average member of the population and the average person seated in political office does not understand what a right is, does not understand that human beings have total sovereign rights over their own body, and their body may not be forcibly violated by another, and call that somehow law or cooperation or compliance with the law. There is a word for that. There is a word for that type of violence and duress and claim of ownership over another. It's called slavery, ladies and gentlemen, if we're being honest with ourselves.
That's only if we're being honest with ourselves, and I think the main problem that we have is essentially a political reality check hasn't happened in this country, maybe not in any other, since maybe the Revolutionary War. And this is a good time, I think, to think about the concept of freedom and what it actually means, particularly during an election, because as you say and have said on your show many times, government itself is in fact slavery, and I'd like you to explain that to the political hopefuls of the NZPP so that they can get their head around it while they're going into this fight.
Yeah, and it's going to be difficult for many people to hear, especially if they don't have a background in my work, especially if they don't have a background in true moral philosophy. If they simply are pragmatists or people who are coming at things only from the perspective of materialistic need, okay, or from a perspective of established political thought, this is going to be very, very difficult for most people in that frame of mind, in that state of consciousness to hear. Because what we are really talking about is what true spirituality is. We are talking about higher level consciousness and an ultimate understanding of what rights are. So I would back it up to the point of, does anyone really truly believe that modern politics is anything that is drastically different from old kingship and queenship? Is it any different than old rulership of a kingdom? Okay. The only real difference between old kingships and modern politics is the diffusion of power into an oligarchical group. See, in the old world or the ancient world, a king was the unquestioned, unchallenged ruler of his society, and the subjects were under him. They were essentially what you would call his slaves. They could not overrule the decisions of the king. The king's word was the law. And that power, rulership...
If I may, at the moment, New Zealand has a queen. So we literally haven't gotten past that point.
That's right. And many other countries still have kingship and queenship. Right. So this form of authority was total and absolute. It was a totalitarian dictatorship. And the authority was vested in one individual that ruled by what was known as the divine right of kings. They considered themselves, because of their genetics and their family bloodline, which was, then passed on to their heirs, they considered themselves the ultimate political and often religious authorities because their bloodline and their genetics gave them the divine right to rule. They were the representatives of God, the creator of the universe, on the planet Earth. And they took that ultimate power upon themselves as the representative of God on earth, and claimed that because they had certain genetics or bloodlines, that gave them the divine right to rule over their subjects. And people actually believed this claim. This ridiculous, psychopathic, and racist claim, because their bloodline made them better than other people, they actually believed that claim. The average person was that stupid, believed that somehow these people's bloodline gave them the right to rule over other people in society with unchallenged rulership. Today, we have really not much of a difference. Here's the only difference between the pharaonic dynasties of the ancient world, between the kingship and queenship, these kingdoms of the old world, okay, between the warrior priest bloodlines of the ancient tribal societies in which these ancient warrior kings said that they had total control over the people and their lineage gave them the divine right to rule. We really haven't progressed much as human beings. We think we have, but we have not. We believe now the people elect representatives, and those representatives have rights to pass what we call laws, okay? All that has changed is we have allegedly diffused the concept of authority from the seat of power being in one individual as a king or a queen or a pharaoh or a priest king, Okay? We have diffused that concept of authority and rulership into the hands of an oligarchical few, which we now euphemistically refer to as government or government representatives. Otherwise, the exact same conceptual ideas of authority and rulership are in place, because government is not a set of suggestions. Government is not a set of guidelines drawn about via scientific understanding, and then we are publishing those results and telling people this might be a good idea. Government is none of those things. Government is decrees of rule called laws, which if people decide, which are often arbitrarily chosen, they are not chosen by any objective standards of morality, because in one place that which is law doesn't exist in another place, so you could do the same exact behavior in two places and receive different results for the same behavior. Therefore, there's not even an objective standard of whether a behavior is actually moral. It's legal in one place and time, it's illegal in another place and time. You could be punished for doing the very same behavior in one place that you could do in another place or at another time without any punishment whatsoever. So it's based in the concept called moral relativism, that man may arbitrate or decide for themselves what right behavior is and what wrong behavior is. There is no objective standard for what moral behavior is or what immoral behavior is.
And this is where we get into the concept of natural law, because it has those objective pillars, essentially. Could you explain that?
Yes, so before I even get into that, we have to realize that man's law or government is always based upon moral relativism, because one government in one place or time can say, these are our set of rules, and they can completely contradict in almost every way another government at another place or another time. And they would say, these are the standards of what is right and wrong. That's the concept of moral relativism. There is no objective standard of morality based in behaviors which actually do or do not cause harm to other sentient beings. And as you said, the study of this and the understanding of this is known as natural law, when we get into what behaviors are actual rights that we have inherently by nature of our existence, which can never be taken away by anyone else. They are not given to us by any human beings, therefore they cannot be taken away by human beings. Then there are wrongdoings, which no one can ever delegate or make justified or make into a right or turn into a right, because they are always violations of human beings' rights and property.
And to illustrate that, ladies and gentlemen, you've got a right to steal from people, hurt people, murder people, do you? No, you don't. Okay, but the government can do that, right? They can send the police in, they can hurt you, they can steal you through taxes, or they can poison your water with fluoride, right? And that'll eventually cause cancer and kill you. So where did they get those rights from? Did they get them from the people who don't have those rights?
Yeah, they really don't have those rights is the actual answer in nature. In point of fact reality, no such rights exist. They are invented constructs that are illusory. They only exist in the mind of a person who is both wrong and ultimately mentally and psychologically diseased to believe that such rights exist in the first place. So we can explain it like this. Here's the problem with the reception of this information, Vinny. The ego, the human ego, is completely in the way of the understanding of what a moral right is. And this is because of collectivism. This is because people erroneously have become identified in their own ideological identification of self with a group dynamic, instead of understanding that all rights must be individual rights. There is no such thing as group rights. A group is a constructural idea formed by a mass grouping of people. Rights only exist for individuals, not for groups. We first of all, we have to define what a right is and understand why groups do not have them, individuals do.
And just before we do, every 15 minutes in this show, I just want to remind people that this is a listener-supported broadcast. So if you want to donate to support the show, KiwiBank, PayPal, or Patreon, you can do that in the description there. And bear in mind that we've got no advertising budget. So if you want the show and its concepts to get out there, you've got to share it. You've got to like it. You've got to subscribe to the channel. Now, in the description as well, there are a bunch of links to NZPP, and you can sign up there as well. Sorry, Mark, continue.
You got it. So we have to understand that the reason people are so inculcated into the ideological religion called government, and yes, government is a completely false religion. And again, I'm not even talking about cultural religion. I define religion. I'm not talking about Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, etc. I'm talking about a belief system which is completely false, incorrect, and leads us to a complete trap in consciousness from which most people never emerge in their natural lifetimes, and it keeps leading us to places that we say we don't want to go as a human species, but false beliefs ultimately take us to those uncomfortable and often places of complete enslavement. Okay, so we have to understand what is a right by definition. Most people cannot provide the definition of a right. A right is an action or a behavior that does not initiate harm to another sentient being. Most people, when asked, cannot provide that fundamental philosophical and moral definition of what a right is, what a human right is. Okay?
I would also define that as doesn't cause harm to a human being or their private property.
Or their property, or any sentient being. Okay, so a right of property is a right of an individual by extension. A right of life, freedom, etc. These are all rights by extension of property. Okay, so we're going to understand that natural law is all about property. Okay, which is also a concept that people want to blur or say doesn't exist. Okay, we have certain properties. We have our life. We have our rights. We have our freedom. We have our free will. We have free will to associate with others, okay? We have free will not to be coerced. We have the right not to be coerced. We have the right not to have our rights violated, okay? We have the right to accurate information so we can make informed decisions, okay? Without being deceived or that decision process clouded by deception.
Well,
right?
When I went in to have my daughter born, that kind of thing, the amount of times that I asked for a list of side effects of the medications that they were planning on giving her and did not receive a response, that's a violation of my right to informed consent. And they have an entire board on the side of the wall in the hospital showing what your rights are, and then they violate them right in front of it.
Without a doubt, this goes on continuously. And ultimately, it's all because people just think they are the arbitrators of rights and that rights belong in their hands to cede to whoever they choose as they see fit. And nothing could be further from the case. That's the usurpation of other people's rights and freedoms, and that's believing ultimately that these people who are doing this process are gods. And nothing could be further from the truth, okay? So if we don't understand, first of all, what a right is, we can never understand what wrongdoings are. Rights are actions that a human being can take that does not initiate harm. Rights do not initiate harm to other sentient beings, okay? So that's a negative definition. We can only understand rights by what you may not do. It's a negative definition. So then you have to define what initiates harm. What are the behaviors that actually in the real world, not in perception, but in point of fact reality in the natural world domain through behavior, violate other people's rights because they initiate harm against them. This is a very short list. It is a list of 7 behaviors, but if we understand them properly in context, it is actually one behavior. There is only one action ultimately that violates the rights of other beings. That is it. There is only one action that actually causes harm, initiates harm to other sentient beings, and we will get to what that is. The 7 behaviors that initiate harm to others are murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and willfully lying. Now let's take each one of them briefly in turn. Murder is the taking of some other being's life when you have no right to take that life. That's why it's called murder, okay? That is stealing or the theft of life without right. So it's a form of theft. Then assault. Assault is the theft or taking of well-being or health without right. When you assault somebody and you have no right to do so, you are taking their health or well-being and you have no right to do so. Okay? So that is a form of theft. You are taking well-being without right. Rape is the taking of someone else's free will to sexually associate with whom they choose to. So if you take that sexual free will association away, that is known as rape. You have initiated harm by taking that sexual free will association away from someone else violently. That is called rape, and that is a form of theft of free will sexual association.
And let's not forget the origin of the word violence is from the Latin violare, that kind of thing, and that's where all violence comes from, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right.
Violate.
Correct. It's a form of violence through theft. You are always taking something that does not belong to you when you commit a form of violence or violation of another sentient being and their rights and property. So then you go to just theft. That is the simple taking of property that does not belong to you. Most people generally understand that if you have no right to someone else, what someone else lawfully owns, you cannot take it from them. That is called simple theft. Then you have trespass. Let's go to trespass next. Trespass is the taking of someone's security in their own living domain or their own living space or lair, which you have no right to take. Okay, so that is also a form of theft. Trespass is a form of theft. And then coercion. Coercion is the taking of someone else's free will, which you have no right to take. And by extension, when you coerce someone, you are placing them under duress, which is the threat of violence. So you are taking their free will away and you are taking their right to remain not under continuous duress or threat of violence away. This is also a form of theft. And then the final one is willfully lying, and I'm talking about something that someone needs information regarding to make informed decisions. We're not talking about so-called little white venial lies of, your wife asking if you like the new high-heeled shoes she bought, and you really don't like them, but you don't want to, offend her, so you say, yeah, honey, I like your shoes. That's not what I'm talking about by willfully lying. I'm talking about, telling people, this chemical is totally harmless because you've received a payoff, and in fact it's a carcinogen. Those types of lies that we need to make informed decisions about our life, our property, and our rights, okay, and our well-being. No one has the right to willfully lie or withhold information that they know that is ultimately going to help people to come to an informed decision, okay? That's called deception. That's called fraud. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Willfully lying about that which is important for making informed decisions.
And
okay? Those are the 7 true deadly sins, not the 7 so-called deadly sins of religion. These are the actual transgressions against natural law: murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and willfully lying.
And as you have summarized all those 7 laws as the one law of the universe, you cannot take that which does not belong to you.
That's all it is. There is ultimately one wrongdoing. There is ultimately one transgression against all true natural law of morality, and that is don't steal. Theft is the only wrongdoing. Every single form of wrongdoing that you can ever commit in this life is and always will be a form of theft of property which you have no right to take. So we are here to learn one spiritual lesson: don't steal. All of natural law could be summed up in that one axiom, in that one maxim: do not take that which does not belong to you. And we as human beings ultimately are a society of thieves. We are a society of people who want to arbitrate what law in creation moral law in creation actually is. And we want to say we can do this with impunity because we can confiscate property. We can put people under coercion and duress, and we can delegate these wrongs. We can say, now see, here's where people have a lack of understanding of this, Vinny. Here's where they have an ego problem. Here's where they believe they're the rulers of creation. Here's where they believe they're gods ultimately. They cannot hear this simple truth because they're stuck in a collectivist mindset. They never apply the behavior to themselves because they believe in a mythical god called government that has rights that other people don't. They believe in a collectivized body of people, this oligarchical kingship that I'm talking about, euphemistically called government instead of a master or ruler over others, which in fact it actually is, because its decrees are commands of compliance backed by violence. That's what all of man's laws ever have been, okay? And people believe that rights that don't exist for the individual to perform, okay? All a collectivist needs to do is step out of their collectivist mindset for a moment and just ask themselves as an individual the question, would I have the right to perform this behavior as an individual against my fellow man or woman?
Can I illustrate that as well? There are only two people on the planet. Imagine one person does something to somebody else. That's how you know it's a right or not. For example, cannabis. There's only two people in the world. One guy doesn't like you smoking cannabis and says that you can't have it. Nah, mate, it's mine.
Right. If I hated bananas and thought that they were even not good for someone, and there was three other people on the planet and they wanted to consume a banana, would I have the right to tell them what they can and cannot put into their body in the form of food or nutrition? No. Why? Why don't I possess that right as an individual? There is a reason. Someone else's body is their own property, which means they may put into that piece of property which they own and possess during the course of their natural lives while they are using it what they choose to. Therefore, if I try to tell them you may not put this food item in your body, I am making a claim of ownership against the body of that individual. What is the claim of ownership against the body of an individual referred to as? Slavery. That's why all forms of prohibition are slavery. All forms of prohibition are of telling people you may not consume any substance, whether it goes to cannabis, rat poison, oranges, doesn't make a difference what it is. You are telling someone else I own your body, and that's called slavery. You know, if I tell someone I'm going to tax them, that's saying the product of your labor belongs to me. By extension, the product of your labor is your property to do as you will with it because you perform the labor with your body. So by extension, the product of it is also your property. If someone else comes along and says, for whatever altruistic reason they claim, I'm confiscating your labor at the point of weaponry, at the threat of coercion, at the threat of violence, that's called duress. And what is that ultimately? That is saying your property by extension, your labor belongs to me. Well, if I make a claim upon the extension of your labor, I am by extension making a claim upon your body because that's what you use to perform the labor to provide the product of your labor. It's a very simple philosophical extension, which most people just don't do. They don't philosophically think it through. They don't logically think it through because they don't have logic. They don't have philosophy in their mind. All they have is a belief system which constitutes a religion called government that they've been taught since the day they were youngins, since the day they were little boys and girls, and they've continued to believe that religion until they become adults.
You're absolutely right.
In a ridiculous religion.
You're absolutely right. And people may age to the point of being as old as an adult, but their mind doesn't necessarily travel with them in terms of maturity. Now, it's time for our 15-minute plug as well. We had the Family Pantry. I've got a little business card here. I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see it, but they just sent us a big box of organic food and vegetables and all of that kind of stuff. Absolutely quite beautiful. And it was only $60. It was very, very cheap. And so if anybody wants to give them a plug, they're on Facebook, Family Pantry NZ, or go to www.familypantry.nz. Now, the reason why I'm doing this show to a large degree is because of this little thing here. Yeah.
Daddy loves you so much because
That's what it's all about.
Look at how cute it is.
All right. That's enough. That's enough.
It's just absolutely gorgeous. And, the real thing that people don't understand, I think, is that you have a sense of responsibility, not only for yourself, but you do have a responsibility to others who cannot protect themselves. And that is precisely what babies are, ladies and gentlemen. The mother is supposed to nurture, or at least this is what the ancient Greeks believe, the mother is supposed to nurture the child while it cannot take care of itself, but as soon as it has the ability, not the capacity, but the ability to defend itself, that is when the father is supposed to teach them how to take care of themselves, right? And, my concept on this is I'm trying to take care of my country sort of in a fathering way, to bring information to people, that sort of thing. And I ask people to voluntarily donate if they can. Links are in the description. Mark, continue.
Yes, so if you understand what a right actually is, an action or a behavior that one can take that does not initiate harm against another sentient being. It does not conduct violence against another sentient being through the form of some form of theft. You understand that as an individual, you can never take a wrongdoing and convert it into a right. The behavior is objectively either moral or immoral, okay? So that's an objective standard of moral behavior. Most people in the world are moral relativists. This means that they believe that morality is a subjective construct that is created by human beings. No, it is not. It is definitively not that. Morality is objective, and I just explained how and why morality is objective, because the initiation of harmful behaviors in the form of those 7 behaviors, which are forms of theft, and by the way, no one can ever specify any form of behavior that is not a form of theft that is a wrongdoing or a harmful behavior. Every harmful behavior is a form of theft. You will not be able to provide any example of a harmful behavior that is not a form of theft. Okay? You are always stealing someone else's rights, property, or freedom when you commit a wrongdoing, an actual immoral behavior, or a behavior that constitutes violence. The collectivists don't understand this because they never attributed the behavior to themselves as an individual. If you don't have the right to conduct a behavior as an individual, you can never delegate that behavior to another individual and magically turn a wrongdoing into a right. This is what all government is. If you tried to tax someone else, people would tell you you have no right to do that. But as a collective unit calling themselves government, this group of people does have the right. Well, guess what? If 1,000 people coming together have zero money, have zero coins, zero bills, they do not have $1,000 collectively as 1,000 people, they cannot give $1,000 to anyone else. It is the same thing when it comes to rights. You cannot delegate rights to a group that do not exist for the individual. It cannot be done. You cannot add 0 plus 0 and come up with 1,000. It does not exist ever. It never existed, and it never will exist. And this is what people who believe in the concept of government, the religion of government, the cult called government, actually believe can be done in nature. It cannot. They are actually believing in a religious belief, and it is completely untrue. It is a false constructural idea that only exists in a person's mind who has a diseased psyche regarding what behaviors are moral and what behaviors are immoral. They do not objectively understand the difference between moral behavior and immoral behavior. And ladies and gentlemen, that is what natural law actually is. Let's clear one thing up regarding the words natural law, because so many people want to give false definitions of it. and they want to conflate it and confuse it with other things. Natural law is not now, never has been, and never will be, and it will never have anything to do with Darwin's theories of evolution. It has nothing to do with the survival of the fittest. It has absolutely nothing to do with animal behavior whatsoever. Okay? As a matter of fact, natural law has zero to do with what people call the so-called natural order, the law of the jungle, survival of the fittest, Darwinian evolution. Throw all of those concepts out of your head. It has nothing to do with any of those things. It is a set of moral binding principles and laws that exist objectively and inherently in nature, that man did not put into effect and that man cannot take out of effect. The creator of the universe, regardless of whatever you want to see that force as, that which put all of the other matter and forces of the universe into effect, also put natural law into effect, and nothing that mankind or any other 3D being in the universe can ever do can remove those laws from effect in the universe any more than anything a three-dimensional being could do to completely remove the laws of gravity or electromagnetism from the universe. They are in effect and will always be in effect, and they have absolutely nothing to do with Darwinian theory or survival of the fittest or animal behavior. Natural law is a set of moral laws inherent to creation that are eternal and immutable. That means they are unchanging and that they are not man-made. And what they do is they govern the consequences of 3D beings who exist in the universe who have the mental capacity to understand the difference between right and wrong behavior. Human beings do have that mental capacity. Animals do not. Lower animals of the animal kingdom do not actually have the capacity to think and reason at the level of a human being regarding morality and moral principles. That is why human beings are bound to the principles and laws of natural law, and at the animal kingdom, the rest of the animal kingdom is not. Let's make that distinguishment crystal clear before we even proceed any further regarding natural law, okay? Because most people have a very unclear idea of what it even means and get it all twisted in with Darwinism, survival of the fittest, natural order, and so on and so forth. And it has nothing to do with any of those things, okay? The second
just
thing
remember,
is,
ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark when he's calm, okay?
Oh, I'm backing it up extremely compared to how I normally am these days.
That's
Vinny.
right. And I just wanted to ease the tension a little bit. There's a rumor going around that the cure for COVID-19 is chicken soup. However, the government has advised that people don't put too much stock in it. Now, keep on going.
People can really laugh about it in my personality, and I say knock yourself out. It doesn't make a difference because it's going to be your funeral, folks. I already understand this stuff, and I'm going to be in a good place regardless of what happens to me because I follow natural law and I harm none, and I don't condone the harming of others through the belief in government. I don't condone slavery and violence. I know that they're always immoral, and can never be made into moral behaviors through justification or belief. So I'm not the one that you got to worry about, folks. You could say I'm high-strung, etc. So be it. I know what's right, and I know what's wrong, and I adhere to those principles in nature because those are the laws of the creator of the universe, regardless of whether you accept it, believe in it or not. It's real, and you're bound by those laws. And it has nothing to do with a religious statement. This has nothing to do with religion whatsoever. This is actually a scientific of understanding of how behavior creates consequence in nature. Let me say that again. This is a scientific understanding of how behavior collectively creates consequence in nature, meaning that there are laws that govern our collective behavior, and they bring to us through our free will decision-making processes that we then put out into the world through our behavior, the consequences that we then must experience as the reality that we all have to live in together. And all you have to do is look at the consequence or the result to determine, has humanity behaved in the aggregate or in the collective degree, morally or immorally? There is a law that governs whether an entire species of beings ends up being free or enslaved. There is a law, a scientific law, that governs that consequence. And all the people who want to laugh and snicker and jeer and say, oh, yo, this guy's high-strung, okay, you don't know how the laws that bind you work, okay? So you know what you're laughing at? You're not laughing at me, boys and girls, little children. You're not laughing at me, okay? You're laughing at yourself. You're ultimately mocking yourself, and you're ultimately harming yourself. You think in your ignorance that you understand how it works, and you actually know zero about how this science works, because this is not a belief system. This is not a religion. I am opposed to all forms of belief and religion. I think all forms of belief and religion need to be completely destroyed. That is what has led us to this current condition of slavery, is belief and religion. People believing in the claims of tyrants and accepting them as true. People believing in nonsense religions and nonsense cultural and then ultimately completely mind-based religions like government, okay? That aren't even the cultural, spiritual so-called religions of Christianity, Judaism, etc. Okay? We believe in even more deeply entrenched religions like the religion called that some people have authority over other people. It's 2020 and people believe in this slavery. Stop mincing words and stop calling it euphemistic things like government or even minarchist government. That's called slavery light. Oh, you just believe in a little bit of slavery. There is no such thing as a gradation of slavery. Either someone is free or they are enslaved due to violence and coercion. Let's grow up and put our big boy pants and big girl pants on and understand it's just slavery. Authority is slavery. The belief in authority is slavery, ladies and gentlemen. It always has been slavery, it is slavery now, and it always will be slavery. It does not make a difference if you do not understand that. If you condone and support authority, you are a supporter and a condoner of slavery, and that makes you an immoral being that believes in and condones violence, slavery, and duress. The threat of violence if you do not comply to the ruling class's commands. That's all it is. That's all supporters of government are now and ever have been. Okay, so you can laugh about it, you can mock it, you could snicker and jeer. It's your funeral. Because the religious beliefs of other people, you don't have to believe in them. You don't have to understand what ultimately controls the world and the ultimate diseased mindset that the ruling class and the rulers of the world believe in. You don't need to believe in that for them to firmly believe in it as an entrenched religion in their ideology and their mindset. And guess what, folks? They're acting on it to put you deeper and deeper and deeper into bondage. So laugh all you want. Okay, especially people in other countries other than the United States. Because you know what? You'll be the first fed to the big government beast. America, they'll have a lot harder time because let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, we're heavily armed individuals. And you won't have an easy time putting us in overt bondage. You'll have to keep doing it through mind control and mental manipulation. Okay.
That's another interesting thing.
When it comes to time for overt bondage, you won't get done here in America what you'll get done in places like Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and practically everywhere else in the world. Because you have no ability to defend yourselves through true self-defense. And guess what? It ain't going to go down as easily in America as it'll go down in other places. So laugh all you want, boys and girls.
What I found interesting is that directly after taking the guns off of New Zealanders with almost no justification, in fact, no justification whatsoever, they then announced, hey, people with guns are going to come to your house and force you to do stuff. Like people aren't putting two and two together here.
What are you going to do then? You know what most of your population's going to do, Vinny? They're going to kiss over and pucker. They're going to bend over and pucker up. Okay? Get as offended about it as you want, folks. When violent people representing government come to your location with guns, how will you resist? Serious question. Your population will bend over, get in position, and you guys better pucker up. Because it ain't going to go down like that in America, like it'll go down in your location. So you can laugh at the Americans all you want for our tightly held belief in firearms. Guess what? When it comes time to it here, we'll see who has a harder time enslaving who. And that's all I have to say.
Yep.
About that.
And interestingly enough, perfect time for our 15-minute ad break, ladies and gentlemen. Please, if you can, donate to the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. We've been doing this for over a decade, ladies and gentlemen, and the rabbit hole goes very, very deep over here. And we have so many people that I want to thank. I want to thank all the mods in the chat room for keeping the riffraff off. Can somebody please get rid of Gary Peters, perhaps? But the other concept here is you don't understand how much work it actually takes to aggregate information and then just give it to people. It takes years and years and years of talking to people who've had experiences that you haven't had and actually listening to them. So if you go back, ladies and gentlemen, and you see that there are 4,000 videos on this channel alone. That doesn't count all the social media posts and varying other degrees of stuff. There is a wealth of knowledge on this channel, and you can benefit from it if you choose to. But the difficulty is people will see one concept that they don't like. Oh, this person believes in reptilians. Oh, this person believes in the Illuminati. Vinny interviewed them. Vinny must believe in those. Vinny must be stupid. And that kind of thing. No, it's not the case. Just listen to people, and then you will find out information from them. And even in a desert of lies, one can find a grain of truth. So please go to the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. There's little drop-down PayPal buttons there, so you can donate regularly to the Vinny Eastwood Show. Been doing this for over 10 years, and thank you so much to all the New Zealanders who donate through KiwiBank as well. And of course, I've got to mention the Patreons, guys. At the end of the month, when my power bill and internet bill and all of that kind of stuff comes in, my wife can't work, okay, because she's taking care of our little baby over here. So the real thing is, there we go. There's the baby.
Because you're just so cute.
It's so cute. So cute, this little bubba.
That's enough.
And so every month when you guys come in with the Patreon and what have you, it makes a huge amount of difference to keeping us warm, keeping us fed. So I just want to thank every single person who supports the show in whatever capacity that you're doing. Mark, continue.
Well, Vinny, there's an old saying here in the United States, liberty or death. You know, and most people don't understand that because most people are actual cowards that will let their rights be stripped from them with absolute impunity. And they would never conduct any physical consequence upon someone for taking their rights or even the rights or lives of their loved ones. They would sit back and watch it happen powerlessly. You know, what we need as much as knowledge in the world is courage. You know, that's the kind of thing that you have to stand up to a tyrant with. You got to say, no, I'm not going to tolerate this because it's immoral. It's wrong. If we don't ever learn what our rights are, we will never stand up to protect them. If we don't know what immoral behaviors are, we will never say no to them. Okay? And this is the problem with the people of the world. They do not know what rights are. They do not know what the wrongdoings are that can never be turned into rights. And we have accepted the decrees and we have accepted the claims of tyrants that believe that they have such rights. They never had such rights. Such rights never existed in creation and never will exist. No one can ever delegate a wrong. A wrong can never be turned into a right. Okay? And a right can never be turned into a wrong and or usurped or taken away in nature. All that can happen is a claim of those things can be made, and they could be incorrectly and religiously believed in and attached to by people who have a blind religious faith or religious belief system. And my tolerance, as I've crossed middle age. I'm about middle age right now. Okay. But as I've approached the middle age point and started to cross it, my tolerance for that level of ignorance gets lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. I don't have time for that level of ignorance. I've been saying the same thing for going on over 15 years now, and privately for 20. Okay. Publicly for 15, over 20 years privately, I've been teaching and explaining these very concepts and ideas and philosophies, okay, and laws of creation. And not only have things not changed for the better, they've rapidly gone into far worse and worse and worse territory collectively. Speaking as a culture and as a species.
Can you go into the worst territory of psychopathic and satanic and secret societies and what power they actually have over current governance structures?
Yes. Well, here's the main thing that most people do not understand and will not look into because they've been told not to look into it. And so they listen to the talking heads on the mainstream media, or they listen to the entrenched priest class in cultural religions like priests and rabbis and imams, and they will not look into the body of knowledge known as the occult. Okay. And when people even hear the word, they have a visceral, reaction, and they kick back and they go, whoa, the occult. Oh, they're untrue, or that's all evil, and nobody should be looking into that. And they have no idea what it actually is. Occultism is a body of science about how the human psyche works and operates and how the true laws of nature work and operate, particularly the unseen laws and the spiritual and moral laws of creation. That is what occultism really is. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with belief. It is a science of how the human psyche works, and it is a science about how the laws of nature, which cannot be easily seen with the eyes or measured with traditional scientific instrumentation, actually work. It is hidden knowledge that has been deliberately hidden or sequestered from the vast body of the public in order to keep them asleep, in order to keep them ignorant, in order to keep them out of the know, so that they can easily be manipulated by those who are in the know. That is all occultism ever has been. That is all occultism ever will be. Picture it like this. What if everybody on Earth except maybe 10 people did not understand how simple arithmetic operations work? Okay? 10 people understand it, and 7 billion people don't. 7.5 billion don't understand simple arithmetic. What if no one was knowledgeable in simple mathematics, simple arithmetic? No one could add, subtract, multiply, or divide. How easy would it be for those 10 people to completely manipulate the good with goods and services, take people's resources, etc., if 10 people understood arithmetic operations and 7.5 billion people remained ignorant to that and called it evil to understand it, or they poo-pooed it and said, oh, that's just some quaint nonsense religion and nobody should ever look into arithmetic operations. You should never look into arithmetic. That's nonsense. That's ridiculous. That's where we're at. That is exactly where we are at. The place of ignorance is so deeply entrenched that people actually say, don't understand what our current masters of the world understand. No, remain ignorant so they can keep manipulating the human psyche, so they can keep socially engineering us. That's what the occult is. It's ancient psychology that a few people in the highest level positions of power learned through the transference of this knowledge down their bloodline history. And everybody else stayed ignorant of it, so they were able to basically mentally enslave them like at the drop of a hat, at a snap of a fingers. And it's child's play.
And Waterman has asked you to define ignorance and nescience.
The difference between ignorance and nescience. Yes. Okay, ignorance comes from the Latin verb ignorare. It means to willfully remain unaware of information even though it is present. Nescience comes from the Latin, the English word nescience, the noun nescience, N-E-S-C-I-E-N-C-E, like nay science, like the negation of science, the negation of knowledge. It means, nescience comes from the Latin nesciere. Nesciere in Latin means to not know, but with the connotation that you are not in a place of knowledge because that knowledge is actually unobtainable or unavailable to you. So you are ignorant. You are not ignorant. You are unaware of it through no fault of your own. The knowledge is not present if you are nescient of it. We do not live in a nescient society, Vinny. We live in an ignorant society. Ignorance means the knowledge is readily available and present in your immediate environment, and you are capable of learning it, but you have willfully chosen to ignore it and to remain not knowledgeable. Okay, so that is a free will choice. That's why we are not a nescient society. We are an ignorant society.
That reminds me one time my sister was making a sandwich with white bread and while she was pregnant, and I said, hey, do you know that white bread's got bleach in it? And she goes, look, I'm perfectly happy in my cushioned bubble of ignorance. She actually said those words.
Right. Sure. And this is what we do. You know, even if we do know something, we don't want to change our behavior because it's comfortable to just do what we've always done. And that's not human nature, folks. This is the other thing I always hear people say, okay, which proves their ignorance. Human nature is that we take in information, okay, we make decisions based upon the information that we have taken in, and then we act. That's the three-step process. We either take in information and we become knowledgeable, or we refuse information and we remain ignorant. Step number 2 is we process the information and then we come to an understanding of what it means. That makes us have the ability to make informed decisions. Or we don't do that because we didn't take in the information, and therefore we remain in step 2 in a state of utter confusion and lack of understanding. In step 3, we act upon the information that we have taken in and coming to an understanding of, or that which we have remained ignorant and remained in confusion regarding. That is the action step, and that is what creates either wisdom through taking right action based on correct information and understanding, or folly, which is the complete absence of wisdom, which happens because we did not take in the necessary information and come to an accurate understanding of it. That's the threefold process of truth, discovery, and behavior. And if garbage goes in that process, garbage comes out of that process. If you take false information in, you make terrible decisions in step number 2, and your behavior is garbage in step number 3. So if garbage goes in, garbage comes out. If good information comes in step number 1 of that process, and we come to an accurate understanding of what it all means and how it fits together, then we are very knowledgeable and we have an accurate high-level understanding of what it means. Then we act correctly and morally in step number 3, and we receive the manifestation of a free and orderly world and society. Okay, so that's how the laws of attraction really work, right? It's not human nature, it's the human condition. Okay, if garbage goes in, the condition that results in manifested reality is also going to be garbage. If good information goes in and is understood and acted rightly upon, the condition is going to be human freedom. That's the law of freedom. That is the natural law called the law of freedom. As morality increases, because people took in right knowledge regarding rights, understood it, and acted rightly upon it, then society becomes free if enough people do that, if enough people act morally. Conversely, if people do not take in information and remain ignorant about morality, okay, they don't understand it, they remain in a state of confusion, flailing in the dark, and just doing whatever actions they deem they want to do, okay, that is going to result in total human slavery. So the law of freedom is, as morality collectively increases, freedom increases in the aggregate of society.
Now, I'll just stop you there.
Morality declines, freedom declines.
That's right, and that's a very important lesson. And I was talking to my wife yesterday about self-esteem. She's got low self-esteem. I've got reasonably low self-esteem, right? And somebody told me that the way that you gain self-esteem is through committing esteemed acts. And what that reminded me of is you talking about the shadow work. The very last stage in doing the shadow work was to activate the body, activate yourself in this physical universe to actually make a difference. And they seem to dovetail there. Now, I've got one question from Rick Bonner. He asks if you got that tribute at Montrose.
I did. Thank you. Very much. Thank you.
We have only
really
2
helps
minutes
the-
left. I was wondering if you could see if you could quickly sum up the shadow work in 2 minutes. I know it's a hard ask.
Well, see, ultimately, it's about true self-respect. Respect comes from the Latin which means over or again, okay, as to do over, to do again, right? Repeat, to do it again. And then spectare. So respect, respectare. It means to look at. Spectare means to look at, like spectator, spectacle, okay? To look at, to observe. So respect comes from ultimately taking another look at ourselves. It's to look at ourselves again, to go deeply into ourselves and re-examine what is there. Okay? The shadow work is all ultimately about doing that. Okay? It is about sitting with yourself, really being honest about your internal characteristics and makeup. Most people don't want to do this. It horrifies them. It's the last thing they would want to do. They stay busy with external tasks. They talk to other people. They chatter constantly in their mind. They watch television, which chatters at them. They play video games, which chatters at them and keeps their mind occupied. Most people would rather die than sit quietly in a room with themselves because they hate themselves so badly. Okay? And this is what we must do. This is the internal shadow work. The internal shadow work is to sit quietly with yourself and contemplate who you are and look at your own internal characteristics. That's why it's called going into the shadows within. It has nothing to do with the external world or domain. It has to do with the internal psychological domain of the subconscious and the inner parts of the human psyche. Okay? Most people shy away from that work and would do it. They would rather do anything else other than that.
I recall you had a caller onto your show once who went to Alcoholics Anonymous, and he went there with somebody who then was told what he'd have to do in order to make up for what he's done as an alcoholic, and he drank himself to death in a week.
Got up and left and went back to his old ways, because here's the thing, folks. I have never since day one promised anybody that this would be easy. This will probably be the most challenging thing anyone ever has to do. That's why it's called the great work. It's not called the happy-go-lucky fun time party. Okay? It's called the great work. That implies tremendous effort. It's not for the lazy. It's not for the silly. It's not for the ignorant. It's for the serious student. It's for the serious of true change and true justice. Okay? So once again, yeah, you could say I'm a little, hardcore. You could say I'm a little uptight. Okay? If you knew what I know about what really goes on this planet, if you were in the places and rooms I've been around, the people I've been around, you'd be a little on edge and hardcore too. As a matter of fact, you may not have even made it this far, if I may say so myself, because I'm a pretty tough-ass bastard. Yeah. Okay?
I was just thinking, like, the things that other people. Well, the things that Mark has seen, you'd be surprised that he's so calm, and that's no joke. Sounds like a joke. I'm not joking.
And I'm not bragging. I'm saying simply what the truth is regarding my constitution, because it is really not quite what other people's is. I say people, oh, I'm not a Superman or I'm nobody special, but many people have actually told me, no, you can tolerate things at a level that most people would just crumble. Okay? I have a pretty heavy-duty constitution. I have a high threshold for pain. I have a high threshold for trauma. Okay, so, I may be a little different than other people in that regard. I've been in the hospital one time in my life, and the doctor who was, helping me and administering me while I was in the hospital, I told him, take me off the pain medication immediately. I hate the way it's making my mind. I would rather die than live with this type of mindset. I want my regular way of thinking and my regular thoughts back. And he said, if I take you off this morphine drip, you are going to be in such unimaginable pain. You are going to be begging me to put you back on it. I said, get it out of my arm right now. Take me off of the morphine drip. I would rather die than feel like this. He did it, and I dealt with the pain. And it was horrible, and I dealt with it anyway. He comes back into the room the next day. He said, I see, you're still not back on the morphine drip. He said, you must have a tremendous constitution for pain. I said, well, yeah, that may be, but you're not going to make my mind feel the way you just made it feel. I'll take the pain, thank you. Okay? So I may be different than others in that regard to a certain extent, but there are mitigation efforts for this. There are ways of doing this slowly over a period of time that minimizes the extent of the trauma if you know certain techniques to do. And this is what I've also tried to teach people and explain. You could do it a little at a time. You don't have to go right from the starting line to the ending line. You could do a stepwise progression. It could be gentle. You don't have to totally re-traumatize yourself by putting yourself through the healing process, but you do have to be willing to examine yourself very, very deeply and be honest with what you see and what you find. Most people don't want to be honest with themselves. They would rather die than be honest with themselves if we're being honest with ourselves.
Now,
that's the shadow work.
There were seven aspects to the shadow.
Yeah, real quick. You said that, this was all about changing our behavior, about action, right? There's an old saying in the ancient Chinese philosophy, to know but not to do is ultimately not to know, right? Think about that. To know, to claim to know, but then ultimately not to put the practice out there in the real 3D physical world through our actions, through our behaviors, right? If we really don't do what we preach or what we say we know, do we really know it? And the answer is no, we don't. It's only a claim of knowledge. But to know and not to do is ultimately actually not to know.
That's funny.
So
I came to a similar realization. I was having a concept with one of my donors, and they've got all this knowledge. They've been listening to the show for years, but they're not actually doing anything with it. And I said, knowledge that you do not use is the definition of useless knowledge.
That's right. That's exactly correct. All the knowledge in the world would ultimately be useless if it is not put into practice and action in the real world. Absolutely correct.
So stage 1 of the shadow work is stop lying to yourself and those around you. Step 7 is to activate the body in the physical world. What's 2 to 6?
Well, it's not actually the progression is not actually sevenfold. It's actually fivefold.
Oh, my bad.
Okay. Yeah, so we're talking about the steps of the initiatory process. This is called occult initiation into what we would call the shadow work. This is the beginning effort of actually taking the steps to put yourself on the true spiritual path, okay? It has nothing to do with religion, folks. This is learning about how we work inside of ourselves, inside of our own psyche, our own hearts and minds, and then learning how the things that are going on in our perceived external reality actually function so that we cannot go opposite to laws, So in other words, part of the occult world would be understanding how gravity works, ultimately. We now don't consider that occult anymore. Now it's just an established science. People don't walk off the tops of tall buildings or the edges of cliffs because we know how gravity works. A being that didn't know how gravity works might just walk right off of a high ledge and they go splat. The laws of nature don't care about us. They are impersonal laws that govern reality. We either learn how they work and we do not suffer, or we remain ignorant of how they work and we continue to do things that cause self-inflicted suffering. It's not personal. It's just a law in nature. That's why the learning of this is a science, not a religion or a belief system. So in order to begin this work, there's a process called initiation, which simply means beginning. And the 5 steps are: stop lying to yourself. That's number 1. Stop lying. Stop lying, period. But especially to yourself is the context of stop lying. It's the most important part of ceasing and desisting the process of lying. Not only don't lie to other people, but start by stop lying to yourself. If you continue to lie to yourself, you're more likely to continue to lie to other people. So stop lying to yourself first, and then stop lying to other people about what is real and true. Okay? So that's step number 1 of initiation. You have to stop telling untruths. Start being honest, most of all to yourself. See, we want nice, comfortable lies, right? We don't want the truth that is hard to hear. Most people run away from the truth that's hard to hear, but they love the velvety, soft blanket of a comforting lie. Okay? That's why they'll listen to newscasters blow constant smoke up their rear end and tell them lie after lie after lie, even though they have a proven track record of lying. People continue to believe in them. But a harsh voice like mine who's telling you the truth, because I don't want you to believe anything, including me. All I want you to do is learn how the laws of nature work for yourself, put them into practice for yourself, so that you stop causing self-inflicted suffering for yourself and others. Okay? But I'm going to tell you hardcore, harsh truth that makes you want to crumble into a ball at first because you don't want to hear it because you prefer the comforting soft lie coming down like velvety softness upon both your ears. You love that, but you don't want to hear the harsh voice of truth tell you no, everything you've heard is incorrect. You don't know how it works. And there are people who do know. There's this saying, a smart man learns from his own mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others, who has put what not to do out there into the world because of how much suffering it caused for himself. And other people learn from that. It's much wiser to learn when people have done the testing and published the results and you have realized, yes, it does work this way, okay? Then you stop lying to yourself and you realize, I don't have to go down that path of pain like those beings did. That's called learning from history. The so-called smart guy, he learns from his own mistakes, but the true wise man learns from the mistakes of other people that they've shown. Here's what it gets you. Most people don't want to learn like that because they have no wisdom. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I think
lying to yourself.
the one concept of wisdom that people need to learn from is how many people did communism enslave and exterminate in the 20th century, and you want to bring more of it into the 21st? I don't think that's a good idea.
We're talking about like 250 million people conservatively, 250 million souls vanished from the earth. Who knows what they could have created or done, or what children they might have had and what they might have created or done. But we'll never know because they're extinguished from the world because of communist regimes throughout even the last 100 years of relatively recent human history.
Now we're still
and
10 minutes. We're still 10 minutes over time at the moment, so we're trying to get the shadow work out as fast as we can.
Oh, stop dreaming. This means stop engaging in cognitive dissonance. Stop telling yourself contradictory ideas and preferring to believe that a contradictory version of reality can simultaneously exist with what you know to be true. Stop dreaming, okay? Learn the truth. Get yourself out of cognitive dissonance. Okay, cognitive dissonance means you're holding two contradictory ideas in your mind simultaneously because you prefer the comfort of the lie or the dream to how it actually works. This is called stop dreaming. It actually connects with stop lying to yourself. Then learn how to think, and this means stop engaging in belief at all. Belief is the problem. People have belief and opinions instead of knowledge. Knowledge is the only thing going to get us out of this mess. Not belief, not religion, not opinions, not listening to what others say, knowing how it actually works in nature by law, ourselves. And that is knowable. That's called science. That's why it's based in the Latin verb sciere, which means to know, not to believe, to know. The word science comes from sciere, meaning to know. How we come to a place of knowledge or knowing is through the trivium process, the process of the gathering of disparate...
If I may, I just want to define the trivium for people. You ask the questions that you learn in journalism school. Who, what, when, where, how, and you save why for last. Because if you're asking why and you don't know who, what, when, where, and all the rest, you're just spinning your wheels, like a child. Why is that? Why is that? That kind of thing. And I get those questions all the time, and it just frustrates me.
Gather all the eclectic pieces of information first from a variety of sources. That's the first step of the trivium. Gather your grammar, the building blocks of the language you're going to put out there, okay? Get the grammar or the knowledge first. When you have all of that, then you process it. You go through it, and you weed out logical inconsistencies. This is the processing step or the step that leads to understanding. Okay, then the third step is behavior or action or the publishing of your results. You put it out there for other people. You teach it. Okay, you share it with others to make it widespread and to make it common sense knowledge. So that is the action step. That is the rhetoric step. So you have grammar, logic, rhetoric.
And if I may redefine that for you, ladies and gentlemen, that's getting your facts, knowing the facts, and then teaching them to others. That's your goal in life.
Yep. In the ancient mystery traditions of consciousness, they refer to this process as knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. You could look at it in a modern technological point of view as input, processing, and output, which is a great way of looking at it from computing terms. Okay? That's the trivium process. That's the true scientific methodology. That is the classical liberal arts education methodology that has now been removed from schooling and replaced with outcome-based education methodologies. That is why our current crop of young people generally go by what feels good to them or what affects their emotions rather than actual objective knowledge, because the trivium has been removed from schooling and it has been replaced with whatever makes you feel good or makes you feel not offended. Okay, that's outcome-based education that is going to lead to the outcome that the social engineers and controllers of our society actually want. Okay, and they're getting it. So let's move on to step 4 and 5. Step 4 is live in the present moment. True present moment awareness means accept reality as it is from here, accept yourself as it is from here in the present moment, okay? Understand how it really is and how it really works, then work toward true positive change through knowledge, okay? But don't imagine the world is some other way than it is right now. Accept reality as it is in the present moment, but don't accept that things should just stay that way. Okay, that's the difference between understanding there are laws in creation that are eternal, that cannot be changed, and then there are conditions in our current human condition that should never be accepted and should be changed. This is the real prayer of serenity. This is the real understanding of accept that which truly cannot be changed, but refuse to accept that which should be changed, okay? And the wisdom to know which is which, the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. What is cosmic, universal, moral law that can never be changed, that we have to bring our behavior into alignment with or take the negative consequences for refusing to do so, versus what is the conditions of the world that are completely unjust and that we can and should and must actually change.
And may I just add to that as well, it doesn't matter if you can change these things by yourself, all right? If it takes 100 years, if it takes 100 people, it doesn't matter. Should it be changed, then you have a moral obligation to do something about it.
To attempt to do it, to do so, to change it. That's correct. And you help gather like-minded people to make the work easier and go quicker by the concept of many hands make light work. Partner with like-minded people and do the work together. Okay, but it is our moral obligation to change something that is in place that is immoral. No, immorality and evil should never be accepted as just the de facto conditions that, it'll always be like that. We've always had government, so we always must have government. No, it is slavery. It always has been slavery, and therefore it should and must be changed. Okay, so that's true present moment awareness. Fifth is, and final step is activate the physical body. The physical body is part of the entire spiritual domain and part of the process for performing moral and true change in the world. You will need the physical body in order to do that. Respect the temple of the body. Don't pollute it. Get good exercise. Get good nutrition. Don't take toxins in. Take things that help the body to stay healthy and to be strong, because we are going to need our bodies, especially if it comes down to physical self-defense. Okay? Never neglect the physical body. It is part of the great spiritual work.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been one hell of a show, and I only just asked Mark about this a couple of hours ago. Now, it's past 9 o'clock, local Eastern Standard Time. Mark has just done a 3-hour show before doing this. Mark, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a good rest tonight.
You got it. Thank you for inviting me onto the broadcast. I hope the listeners have gotten some good, positive value out of this broadcast tonight. Thank you so much for what you have been doing and continue to do. You're an absolute, incredible human being in our community that has been committed to this great work since even before I've been doing this. And I know that you'll stay committed to it for as long as it takes to get the job done. So thank you, Vinny.
Or until I get exterminated, which could be soon. So you know, I've done what I had to, and I remember one time I was driving down the street and the radio was broken, so I had to think instead of listen to music. And so I thought, what do I want to happen after I die? Not while I'm alive, but not what I want to accomplish, but what do I actually want to have it happen after I die? And it was an activist of some description whose work has contributed to the saving of many, many human lives, or the improvement of such, would speak at my funeral and say, I thought about giving up what I was doing for humanity. But then there was this guy, Vinny Eastwood, who taught me about the lighter side of genocide, and I decided to keep going. And then
That's what it's all about.
And then the next day, I didn't tell anybody this, but the next day, a guy who's authored 10 books on the United Nations covert depopulation agenda, Kevin Galilee, we'll have him on next month, he said almost exactly that on a thread of me, completely unsolicited. And I was kind of pissed off. I was like, damn it, I've already accomplished what I want to accomplish in death. What do I do now?
Yeah. Hey, Vinny, that shows you never know who you're going to inspire and what they might do. So that's one reason why we can never give up and we have to keep pressing forward.
That's right, because ultimately, if the only thing that was left was a whole bunch of idiots who are talking about a whole bunch of nonsense, there would be nobody inspired to love and serve the truth and the true cause of freedom. Mark Passio, ladies and gentlemen, his website is whatonearthishappening.com. Recommendation for those of you who really want to go through the shadow work and do everything, listen to his podcast from episode 1 all the way to the end, ladies and gentlemen. Don't skip them out, do them all. I haven't done this, of course, because I'm lazy. Now, I want to thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, especially all the mods, everybody who donates through the KiwiBank, automatic payments coming in this morning, very encouraging, and so many donations have come through the PayPal, and many people are starting to sign up through the Patreon. It's extremely encouraging, especially as we're going into this election season. Now, of course, it appears hypocritical, and I completely understand that, not believing in government, yet supporting a political party. But at the same time, what other choice do we have other than do what is right 1,000 days between elections and to expose scumbaggery during the elections? And the New Zealand Public Party is the only people who are talking about this in public, ladies and gentlemen. UN, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. Go and listen to the interview that I've done with Rosa Corey on this channel, and you can define what it is and how massive a threat it is. There is only one political party in this nation's history that has ever so much as mentioned the words Agenda 21 as a negative, okay? And that is happening right now as we speak, ladies and gentlemen. So, Mark, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Go and donate at thevinnyeastwoodshow.com. Links are in the description. Now, with that being said, thank you very much for listening to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state is Vinny's jokes.